Alrighty, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time zone that you're watching from. Welcome to Creative Suitland and Joe's Movement Emporium, Mental Health in the Black Community panel. This is an event that is part of Black on the Block weekend. This is the last and final event of the weekend, but don't fret. You know, Black on the Block will be back at some point. We'll bring this opportunity back to support Black businesses, artists, and performers alike. So I'm very pleased to be joined by some very distinguished and experienced mental health experts. We have a social worker as well as another wellness practitioner. So I definitely want to just go around the room, introduce each other, and we'll come back and get the conversation started. Just want to dive right in because there's a lot to cover. But at the same time, we don't want to limit it just to this time. We also want to keep the conversation going. So there'll be more opportunities for us to have this discussion. So without further ado, just want to pass it to my virtual right. I believe she's on my right, whatever view that you're watching from, but I'm going to pass it to Ms. Mashika.
Hi, so I am Mashika Thomas. I am founder of A Healthier You Incorporation, which is a nonprofit organization that was started last year. The whole purpose of the organization was to provide mind body activities to individuals who just seeking to become a healthier version of themselves. I'm a yoga instructor, I'm a certified community health worker. I am involved in the community. It's all about, providing people with resources and just different tools to be able to become a healthier version of themselves. So that's what I do. And today, how am I feeling in regards to my mental health? I'm literally trying to balance out life. Sometimes you find yourself just saying yes to a lot of things and you just keep going and going, but at some point you have to find out or find time to just rest. So I'm in this space where I'm just trying to find the balance of life right now.
All righty, we'll pass it to Mr. Robert.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Robert Holland. I'm an experienced behavioral health specialist. I've had 10 years crisis work in the behavioral health, psychiatric, as well as suicide interventions. I'm currently an entrepreneur life coach, pending some certifications with RTT therapy and NLP practitioner. As an entrepreneur, I focus heavily on helping people develop those particular skills to mitigate some of that negative self-talk and those background thoughts that need to be challenged. And on the other side, I also help minorities advance in terms of entrepreneurship themselves and build and develop brands and all of that good stuff. As far as my mental health, I'm feeling good today. I'm feeling good. I have a very strong intuitive feeling about this upcoming week and even the month that there's going to be some good things on the horizon. I'm in the process of right now actually scaling back and starting to slow things down in terms of the way that I experience life and moving away from, I guess, establishing so many things in life as projects and realigning myself with who I truly am versus who the world wants me to be or how I've been taught to look at myself. So I'm feeling good. I'm happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to the conversation today.
All righty, thank you very much. Last but not least, let's pass it to Mr. C. Thomas.
Good evening, everyone. My name is C. Thomas. I'm a spoken word artist, child abuse prevention advocate in the DMV. I been writing since age 13, 27 years performing since I was 24. I'm a strong, staunch advocate for Black Lives Matter and Black LGBTQ, and as I said, for child abuse prevention. I find myself now in a space where my mental health is, I can honestly say, is 100% my priority, and I'm honestly taking hold and accountability for my actions as well as myself and trying to find a balance for everything I have going on while still trying to maintain a healthy lifestyle mentally. I'm looking forward to tonight's conversation. I'm looking forward to learning and engaging with everyone and hearing the differences and being in a good way of how everyone advocate for themselves.
Alrighty, thank you all. And last but not least, my name is Malachi Robinson, Director of Creative Suitland Arts Center. I guess specifically in the mental health realm, I've been a yoga instructor for about 4 or 5 years and practicing yoga for almost 10. And then just within that time, just been on my own spiritual journey with learning more about self and prioritizing self care and everything that involves just taking care of my well being and achieving optimal well being. So, with all those experiences, I definitely want to share that with as many people as possible, especially people who look like myself and all of us here. So I think it's critical that conversations like these are held by people who look like us because it allows other people of color to relate and to pull from their own experiences to just to find within themselves which can allow them to open up and talk openly about it, because for so long we've been told to not talk about certain things, or certain things are taboo, and certain stigmas that are on mental health particularly. So I'm excited to have this conversation, and with that, just want to dive right into the first topic, which kind of what I just outlined is, why is it important to have this discussion? You know, us being people of color or mixed race or descendants of slaves or whatever person you categorize yourself, you know, you have some type of weight on your shoulders. So I guess the first topic, whoever wants to take it, just put the finger up or give the head nod and just let me know who wants to go first. But why is it important to keep this conversation going, especially at these times? Okay, see, Thomas.
For so long, well, let me start off this way. This conversation for Black people and people of color is very important to go on, because for so long it was danced around and danced at and oftentimes ignored. And especially for Black men, it was something that, we didn't talk about mental health because there was no such thing as being mentally unhealthy. You had to be this strong, assertive backbone, this resilient, strong person, this person that, could take all of their burdens, stand upon them, and then not break or crack under pressure. And, sometimes often, diamonds are made from pressure, but that's not fair to the mental status of someone who's actually cracking and breaking and falling apart underneath. What do you do when that happens? Like, do you just put them out the pasture? So, this conversation, for us going on to have this conversation about our mental health, we need to have it, because for so long we were taught not to cry, we were taught not to feel, we were taught not to embrace our own feelings. We were taught to be these macho people, this strong, go forward, go at it all the time person. And then the women, Black women, specifically, supposed to cradle the burdens of the Black man, and then just go off and just be the Black woman, and but still have to deal with her own issues and deal with her own problems, and then still have, and then take ours on at the same time, and then have no one to uplift her or no one to aid her. That's not fair, and that put mental weight on her, on the Black woman. Now that we are actually in a space where we can actually have this conversation and actually engage and indulge in mental health for Black communities and for people of color in their communities, I think is a beautiful thing. And the conversation needs to go on. It does not need to be danced around. It does not need to be swept and rug ignored. It doesn't make you weak if you cry. It doesn't make you weak if you feel something. It doesn't make you weak if you need help or assistance. You need it. And to me, that is a great strength to show that you are vulnerable in that time. Vulnerability is a great strength to have. Why not show it and use it? If anything, it shows that you're human. And so that's why, to me, this conversation needs to continue to go on and not die down for generations to come, because generations past, we have been told to stop. And like I always say, it ran in the family until it ran into me. So here we are.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think if anything, the pandemic has definitely made us more human and more humble to those type of experiences, and being open to diving within. You know, the pandemic just ripped the Band-Aid off of a lot of people's old wounds that they've been running from and trying to just cover up and not address. But at least from my experience, and I'm interested to get your experiences as well, is the pandemic has definitely just, opened up my eyes to pretty much the topic here today is taking extreme care of self. Because at the end of the day, we are human and we can only do but so much. We're not robots. We can't run throughout the day and not for 1 second think about self or think about what's best for me. You kind of have to be selfish in some standpoint. So does anyone want to add to that or have any thoughts? Go ahead, Mashika.
I was just going to say that a lot of people are not even aware of mental health and what it looks like for them, or what is a healthy, balanced mental health for their lives, right? Some people think something has to be wrong with them in order to address their mental health. And a lot of people, I know people that I've talked to, they will say, well, I'm here now. I got through that. I can get through whatever I need to get through it again. And it's like, that's not healthy, but they don't know, they haven't unlearned those behaviors that are not serving them well today. And I just feel like that conversation needs to be had, because a lot of people are just not aware of what self-care looks like. What does addressing your mental health looks like for you? Like, addressing your mental health looks differently for everybody, but the conversation needs to be had, because I think people need to figure out what is the starting point for them, and how do they start? Where do they start? Who do they talk to? I mean, some people don't even have those safe spaces, but they can find those safe spaces, and these conversations need to be had so they can be connected to resources, or to the proper care, or to the proper practitioner, to be able to help guide them through, the things that they're going through. But these conversations definitely need to go on, because a lot of people have this mentality of be strong, keep pushing. It's like, well, sometimes you don't have to be strong. You really could just, cry and be vulnerable, and it's okay. And that's strength in itself. So I think that's another thing why these conversations need to keep going.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Robert.
Yes, I just wanted to extend on that and talk about the concept of strength, particularly within the Black community. We define our ability to be strong by overcoming. That's like our bread and butter, that we define strength as overcoming. And when we embrace that, we're also embracing adversity, and we're welcoming adversity for an opportunity to define ourselves as strong. And that's not necessarily a healthy mentality. And that's not necessarily a definition of strength. There are other ways to identify yourself as being strong as a Black person. So these conversations are important, because we sometimes get together into these cult communities with similar belief systems, and we all adopt a way of behaving and thinking in an unhealthy way, thinking that it is okay to think this way because this is all that we know. So as we start to have these conversations, it's kind of like taking a step out of your house from the first time and actually experiencing the way that things are and the way that things can be.
Definitely. I mean, let's go ahead and segue from there. I think that's a perfect segue into talking about, I guess, community. How has the community impacted our thoughts, our awareness of what mental health is, or just even the topic of self-care or mental health, or going to the doctor, physician, or going to the mental health specialist? How have family dynamics and, community or society, how has that played a role in mental health in the Black community? If anyone wants to take that, go ahead, Mashika.
I mean, so before I even got into like therapy, I was battling between even going, because I was like, well, why do I need to go? Like, what's wrong? Like, nothing's wrong. And so I was like, do I even need a therapist? No, I don't need a therapist. Okay, maybe I do. Like, I literally was battling between that, because I was like, well, nothing's wrong with me. Like, I'm okay. I'm good. I can figure it out. But it's not that's not the reason to go into therapy. Or like some people, in regards to family dynamics, they may not trust an outside person knowing things, because they have trusted someone else they didn't know, and that person abused that trust, right? But that doesn't always happen. And like when we go to therapists, they're trained professionals and they provide that safe space. And so I just think from my family dynamics, like my family has not been into therapy. I mean, my sister, she started it, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm interested. But I think when it comes down to it, a lot of people have to feel like something is wrong to even go there. And then even when in regards to like self-care, like I feel like it wasn't until COVID I was like, okay, self-care looks like rest today, and self-care tomorrow looks like me cleaning up my house. But I feel like in these times, like you're taught different things about what does self-care looks like for you. How can you make yourself happy? Like, what do I need to do to make sure that my mental health is good and is at a good state to be able to serve others? And especially for us as healers, we tend to give out, pour out, but how do we pour back into ourselves? So those conversations in regards to community, family, they definitely do have a role in mental health. But I think as a person within my generation, I feel like I am starting to, create that pathway for any other generations that come under me. Like, hey, you may want to seek therapy, or hey, grab a journal, write your thoughts out, let yourself, be free, let your emotions out. Like, your journal is not going to judge you, or take time to just be still, take time to step away from the phone, from social media. Like, all these different things could be a form of self-care. I just don't think a lot of us know what it looks like or haven't been taught to just take time for ourselves.
Absolutely. Does anyone want to add to that? Okay, we'll go with Robert first, then C. Thomas.
Yes, I totally agree with that 100%. A part of the reason why I transitioned into wanting to do life work was because so many people in these communities are not trusting. And in addition to the trust factor limiting access, a lot of times it can be a hassle to even qualify to see a therapist. A lot of people worry about having to be diagnosed, having to be medicated, and justifying that in terms of your insurance purposes. There are so many barriers that are placed in front of communities that need these types of services, with the reverse of the stigma. And the stigma itself does have our own implications in terms of what we identify as strength and weakness. But there are some very real consequences as well in terms of how we are spoken about, how we are documented, and where the next step from this is. So I do notice that a lot of people hesitate to go into therapy, but I think it's very noteworthy that we continue to show that we can be people that are individuals in a profession of healing, but we also seek out healing ourselves. We also seek our own therapists as well, just so that we can start to role model the process for other people, because that's very important.
Adding on to what was, I'm going to butcher this young woman's name. I do, please forgive me. um, Adding on to actually to both parties, I will say self-care, coming from a family and having what a family plays on with therapy. Again, you are told to that therapy isn't needed for you because there's nothing wrong with you. You might be battling demons, anxiety, whatever. Like, something could be going on with you physically. Self-care could be separating yourself from that family, and then taking that and advocating for yourself in that role of going towards, a healthier mental health step. Um, you have to learn to be there for you. You have to learn how to navigate those things for you, and not saying totally disregard family, but you have to stop disregarding yourself. Stop living for them. Stop living up to the standard that nothing is wrong with you because of what your family may have said or pushed on you. Start with yourself. You know something internally is not right, feeling and isn't feeling right within you. You know you're not the person who you should be because of what your family is telling you and how they are making you feel, but you're still trying to put on this facade to go forth based on what your family is telling you or have taught you. You have to learn to sometimes to deprogram that mode of thinking and to reprogram yourself to be a updated version for you. to lead by example for you. So the generation under you, the family members under you can, look up and say, hey, look what he did, or look what she did, or look what they did. I want that. I want that freedom of being, of that healthy mental freedom of, just walking around smiling and being joyful and all that great stuff. And, and if you think about it hard enough, your family is actually the blueprint for that mode of thinking. They've actually laid down the foundation. It's up to us to build a house on top of that foundation.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Sometimes, and it's hard to do because I've been there, done that. Sometimes you have to separate yourself from family sometimes to kind of see the silver lining or see the light at the end of the tunnel. Because if you don't, then you're always just going to be in this mindset of, just running through the tunnel with your eyes closed and not knowing where you're going because you're never going to have that vision. But I wanted to segue into another topic, a little bit more deeper topic, a deep dive into, I guess, what we're talking about here today. So almost a year ago, I want to say back in May or June of last year, we had another mental health panel. It was a Creative Suitland mental health panel full of members of Black Boys Own, which is a collective of Black male yogis. And the topic was, of course, mental health and how is everyone's mental health, and just giving that perspective from men of color and just pushing the narrative that, we can talk about it. And unfortunately, like maybe a few weeks before that event, unfortunately, the George Floyd murder happened, around that time or right before that event. And it just added such a weight, somewhat dark weight to it, but at the same time, it having all of us, come together and talk about what we're feeling and how we're dealing with it. It was therapeutic for, I think, all 5 or 6 of us that were on the panel. And I'm pretty sure it had that same impact on those that were watching as well. All that to say, here we are a whole year later, and we're kind of in the same space, looking at the news. And honestly, I've been staying away from the news for the past couple of weeks just because of what's going on. But what is everyone's thoughts about what's going on, and how can we cope? What are ways to eliminate that pressure, that tension, that anxiety that we're all feeling, no matter how much information or just knowing the basics of what is happening in the current news. Like, what can we all do to kind of breathe and let it go? Outside of breathing, because that's one example right there, is just breathing. But outside of that, what can we do? Go ahead, Robert.
One thing that I find is really important is that we have to learn the value of assigning names to the things that we feel. A lot of times we are coached to identify umbrellas of emotions as anxiety or depression or fear. It's really important for us to break down and go beneath that umbrella term that we've been taught to identify and specify that I'm feeling sad about something. I'm feeling excited about something. I feel like I'm mourning something. That allows us to break the barrier of this. There's a sense of dissonance where a lot of us are afraid to feel the emotion, so we can feel anxiety pending the onset of a feeling, or we can feel depression pending the onset of a feeling. So once we remove that veil and start to call our feelings what they are, identify the people that make us feel this way, the things that make us feel that way, we can also learn to assign value to things that make us feel better.
That's it right there. Go ahead, Mashika.
I just want to piggyback on that, not only to acknowledge those emotions and feelings, but to hold space for them. Because most times, like, people feel sad and like, all right, I know I feel sad, but what's next? Like, I got to do something to not feel sad. What do I got to do to be happy? And it's like, no, feel that, sit in it. How does it make you feel? Like, what is happening around you. Like, hold space for that moment, because what tends to happen is people acknowledge those feelings, but then they're like, all right, I gotta do something else. And then they move forward. Oh yeah, I acknowledged it, but I want to be happy. And it's like, no, you have to hold space for those, even if it feels uncomfortable, like hold space for whatever emotions or feelings you are feeling. And then, like, you don't have to stay there, but feel it, whether it's a day or 2 days, but don't stay there over a week or so. But, take your time. You know when it's time to move forward. You know when it's time to, like, wait, I really have to sit with this. But definitely hold space for yourself and give yourself grace for whatever you're feeling, because not every day you're going to show up as the same person. So each day I've been taught to show up as my best self. My best self is not going to look like yesterday, and it's going to look different for today. But however I'm presenting myself is my best, and I'm allowing myself grace to feel however I feel. And the people around me, I hope they extend that same grace I give myself. But I just want to say, like, we have to learn how to hold space for our emotions and feelings as well.
I am going to agree with everything that was just said. We do need to hold space and acknowledge. And I laugh, Robert, because I teach a workshop, and in one of my workshops I said to name the things that are ailing you, to give them name, to have those conversations with them, to actually put the correct label on it so you can actually know what it is and to acknowledge it. Even if you're not ready to acknowledge it, just say, hey, I see you over there. I know you're there. Right now, I'm not ready for you, but I do know that you're there. I feel you're there. But right now, I'm just not ready for you. And we need to allow ourselves that freedom so we can learn how to deal with what's going on, so we can come forth and be the better person for ourselves before being a better person for anything or anyone else. Because we're no good to anyone if we're not any good to us first. And to ignore and put ourselves and what we're feeling on the back burner just so someone else can actually go on with their life and gravitate the way they need to gravitate, that's not fair to us, because what are we getting from it if we keep putting ourselves in the back burner? So yes, honor that space, hold space for it, name those things, have those conversations with it, sit with it, talk with it. If it's 24 to 48 hours, do what you need to do to get what you need to get out of it, and then move forward. Don't move on, but move forward with it.
Thank you all. Yeah, one thing I'll say I learned in therapy was, I guess, the phrase "stop the pressure." Something I've mentioned, I think, a few times before, is that, kind of like what we all are saying here is, uh, recognizing what that anxiety is, or recognizing what that stress is, naming it, and kind of just taking a step back and assessing, why is this making me feel this way? Holding space, like Mashika said, holding space for whatever it is that you're feeling, and honestly, just allow it to pass, because pain doesn't last always. I mean, as I think the Bible says that, or someone's grandma probably says that a lot, because my grandmother said that a lot. Pain doesn't last always. So you just got to keep your chin up, keep your head up, and keep on moving. And that's how, honestly, I processed, the things that have been happening in the news this past week, and comparing where I am now to where I was last year. I've handled this 10 times, if not more, way better than I did last year, because last year I was a wreck. And I'm pretty sure a lot of us were, in terms of, just a ball of emotions that a lot of people were feeling with, the actual incident happening, and then just the after effects that were just felt around the world. It was just a world of emotion. But this one, I will honestly say, I've taken everything that I've practiced and learned, and kind of just taking it step by step, second by second, minute by minute, and just understanding what the issue is, which we all pretty much here are understanding of what that is, and not allowing it to eat at us, because I mean, a lot of things have been eating at us for quite some time, which is a good segue. I don't know if that means that that's a good segue, but we're going to segue into our next topic, which kind of has, which is related to what we previously talking about. And I'm just going to read exactly what it says and allow us to kind of make sense of what this means. Recently, the CDC, Center for Disease Control, has declared that racism is a serious threat. So I'm just quoting here. It just says, centuries of racism dating back to slavery has battered millions of Black bodies and minds other races, including Asians undergoing racial attacks during COVID, are also victim to the long-term damage caused by racism. So what is everyone's thoughts on just that in particular, and what I don't know, what does this mean? Someone kind of just take it. Go ahead, Robert.
Well, I don't know how much to the barbecue we're trying to take this conversation, but what I will say is that I don't think that it is. I think that there is the nature of the problem. Yes, there is something to be understood, but there's also something to be done. The CDC has also acknowledged numerous times in studies that poverty and oppression is directly connected to Black mental health as well as physical health, as well as probabilities to addiction. There is a study called ACEs, which I base a lot of my work around, which stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And what that survey basically says is that the more adverse childhood experiences you have, the more likely you are to suffer heart disease, lung disease, mental illness, addiction, and the list goes on. But the direct correlation is that we live in a society that has divided us in a way that it makes a certain type of person by race more susceptible to the environment that triggers those types of things. So I don't think that it is news to anyone about racism becoming a problem. And I don't think that the CDC acknowledging it is going to be enough news for us to really investigate, well, what is the problem behind that problem? And how do we have that conversation? And how do we make those ramifications? Because we do live in a society where people feel that if you acknowledge or document something, it's taken care of. And that's certainly not the case.
I absolutely agree. That was kind of my takeaway from it was, okay, what do we do with this information? What is the next step? I'm always thinking about the next thing. You know, you're saying racism is an issue, not only for Black people, but for Asians as well, apparently. So what are you going to do with this information? What is someone else going to do with this information? Instead of just saying something, words are words, action, is something different. I think Mashika, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's nothing new. Like, okay, like what now? Like Robert said, like, what do you plan to do with this information? Like, okay, now what? Like, it's racism in regards to insurance, healthcare, like all around it. Like, we are not like, okay, what's next? Like, there's so many people that's suffering, so many people going through many things because of the laws that are put in place. Like, what are the politicians doing? Like, it's so much that plays a role in it, but like what they saying is like, okay, now what? Like, what do you plan to do now? Like, who wrote the article? Because clearly they out of touch. But I'm not sure. But I don't know. I want to know who wrote the article because that doesn't even make sense. Like, we now declare it's been declared. So okay, but yeah, I digress.
Yeah, just who felt that it was in their spirit to say on this day in 2021, years after Jesus Christ has been on this earth, that now this is a worldwide global issue. C. Thomas, what do you have to say?
Okay, so I'll say this. Robert and Marshika, you guys said a lot. You really have said a lot. And I'll just say this. With everything that the CDC or whoever wrote that article is proclaiming, now all of a sudden as if it's brand new, um, I'll add this. Stop looking towards Black people to fix the racism that we did not cause. Stop looking to us to be the token, to be the cure for something that we did not cause. Stop looking to us to once again to take something that you created, and we all know who you is, that you created to get to us to fix, to build, to reverse or to be the poster person for, because, oh, you guys went through it since slavery, so you know how it feels, so no, you can go ahead and be HR for everyone else, and and hush it over. No, not at all. I'm quite frankly tired of it. I am tired of it. It was an article I read. No, it was a news. Yeah, it was a news article I read on Twitter, and it says, how can Black people be there for Asian people during this moment of racism? Why? We didn't do anything. We didn't shoot up nothing. We shot up not a thing. We're being shot and killed. We're trying not to be shot and killed. Meanwhile, at the ranch, you still want us to show up for something that you created. No, no. You cannot keep putting a band-aid over a gaping wound and then expect us to nurse it, to be there for the infection that you have caused. It's not fair. It is not fair. It's not. That's what I have to say about it.
Okay, putting myself in someone else's shoes, I can see how they can feel like this is a band-aid. Like you said, I think them not even recognizing that it is a band-aid on just a deep, 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 deep wound. It's just at the same time, it's really, I don't know what the word to describe it is. Just lack of
It's stupid.
knowledge, stupid, lack of common sense, lack of being aware of what's actually happening. Because as I think, as mentioned before, racism runs deep. It's not just we're getting affected by one aspect that's affecting our mental health. It's being affected by it for forever. How many years? Through many different ways, economically, through the healthcare system, through policing, over policing, education system. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So you can't come out and say something and declare that it being an issue and not do anything, not do anything to address it. What law is going to get passed because of this statement to prevent neighborhoods from being over policed and ending up doing what's happened over this past week? Or what are you going to do to make sure that there's healthcare available for all and that it's equitable and fair? What are you going to do for that? I mean, I'm about to just talk for like the next 30 minutes asking questions, but moving on to the next topic, because that topic can run us through the rest of this whole panel. So with everything that we've mentioned, one thing I definitely wanted to highlight was something that I'm interested in doing a deep dive in, I guess, in other ways, whether workshops or I think Mashika's actually touched on this a little bit in her Let's Get Healthy series, shameless plug for that. If you want to talk a little bit more about what you eat, what you put in your body, and how it affects your mental health and your emotions, if you want to talk a little bit about that.
In regards to what you eat, foods play a huge role. So if you're listening to this, I want you to Google intuitively eating and what that looks like. So intuitively eating, meaning that when I'm hungry, I eat. When I'm full, I'm full. I don't have a set time when I'm eating or a set time to stop. It's more like, what is my body requiring of me now? So sometimes when people say, well, you must eat breakfast, but what if you're not hungry? Drink some water or start with tea. You don't necessarily have to follow a rule book to be considered healthy, because what may works for my body may not necessarily works for you, which I encourage people, if you can, and if it's affordable, please look into getting yourself a nutritionist, because I see a lot of people who incorporate different meal plans, and it's like, but what if that doesn't work for your body? So prime example for myself, I cannot eat salads a lot because my body does not digest raw foods a lot. But somebody may say, well, eat a salad because it's healthier than a burger. And it's like, but what if it's not healthy for me? Like, what if my body is doing the same thing? So when it comes to food, begin to ask yourself after you eat something, how does it make me feel? Does it make you feel sluggish? Does it make you feel energized? Do you feel like you could think a little bit more clear? Like, just begin to reflect on the things you do or consume into your body. If you drink soda, how does it make you feel? When you drink coffee, are you feeling a lot of anxiety? I mean, personally, for myself, I used to drink coffee. I can't drink it anymore because it is whatever it's doing, the chemical reaction in my brain is like zoom it up. So you have to begin to reflect on the things like there's some foods you may could have eaten before and you cannot eat no longer now because your body doesn't agree with it. As we get older, as we mature, our body changes and our body requires different things. You may need to drink more water and slow down on the juices, but become more aware about what you're putting into your body because these could be some of the things that are holding you back from making the choices you want to make or do the things you want to do. You may be like, why do I always feel like so lazy or I can't get up or X, Y, and Z? Start to look at the foods you're consuming or how much water you're drinking because it may just start with, oh, maybe I'm not drinking enough water. And then start there and you'll notice the more water you drink, the other foods will start to come in align with itself, and you'll be like, well, I don't want nothing greasy. Let me have it baked. Or instead of chips, maybe I'll take vegetables because they're just as crunchy. So as it regards to food plays a huge role in what we do, just with anything else.
Yeah, the whole food topic is really interesting because I've done a little, reading and research here and there about, just how different foods, color of different foods affects different parts of the body, how deep red foods are, rich for possibly your heart or the liver, and then other foods are more helpful for, your kidneys, et cetera. The other thing that was interesting was, I guess before I get to that, if you can just say the title of that book one more time. You said
Intuitively eating. It's just a concept that I saw and I was like, oh, I mean, because sometimes like people have these schedules and they're like, oh, I have to eat. It's breakfast time. I need to eat food. It's like, what if you're not hungry? Start with some tea. Like, you don't have to break your fast with solid food. Like, it could be tea, it could be water. And then maybe at 12, you're like, okay, I want some fruit. Like, listen to your body. Nobody knows your body more than you know it. So don't let no one tell you like that is the wrong way because what's going to end up happening, you're not going to listen to yourself. And then a few years later, you're going to be like, oh, I knew I was right because you're listening to everybody but yourself. Like, you know you more than anybody else. So listen to you.
That's exactly right. Because your body sends signs and signals that a lot of people don't listen to, especially when it comes to like underlying diseases and disorders that, here we go again, with Black people that are prone to getting these type of disorders. I think from, I believe it was in Mashika's workshop, and I've heard another place that a lot of disorders that we have, based off of our ethnicity, all just come from our diet. Diabetes, high blood pressure, cholesterol. The list goes on and on. And if you just simply, it's easier said than done, but listen to the body and manage what you eat, manage your intake, and understand how that process can affect your mental health, your moods, your relationships with people. Because if you're eating a bag of chips every day and it was something that I read that the crunch of the chips can actually raise up your anxiety, or hearing the crunch of other people eating chips can raise your anxiety. For those that can't stand hearing other people chew and, chew, especially chew with their mouth open, and hearing the crunch of certain foods, it raises your anxiety because technically the body doesn't really need anything that makes that sound. So it's really interesting. So if anyone's interested in just learning more about that, read the book that Mashika mentioned, or just, do a deep dive on Google and just go down the rabbit hole and learn more about how different foods affect the body, specifically the mental health. Segueing from there, we're going to go right into self-care. So I guess just going around the virtual room again, I guess we can start with Robert, if you want to go first, and just highlight some areas that anyone can just, any tips or tools for self-care. So just, we all understand the simple things, resting or just taking, personal time. But I guess what things in particular can people do to truly take care of the mental state, their mental health?
Yes. So one thing that's really important is to have a mirror in the space that you spend the most time. Your environment can become a very grounding and solid place. And sometimes when our emotions overcome us, we forget where we are. We forget that we are here in this physical place. So having a glimpse of yourself and being able to see yourself being anxious and see yourself taking those deep breaths or see yourself listening to music is very important, because it's a visual reminder for your brain to process that everything is okay right now. Where you are right now, everything is okay. You have things on your mind, but this space that you're in is safe and everything is okay. So it's always good to see yourself in an okay space.
Okay, and for C. Thomas, I guess same question. What are some tips and tools, I guess from your experience, that people can just either pick up or learn how to do to take care of themselves?
And I'm going to say the complete opposite from what Robert was going to say about the environment. But yes, your environment does have a huge role in your well-being at times, and a lot of times when you're grounded to that environment, it is okay to be there, but every now and then, to step outside of that, like this, like me, I do not like going outside. I don't like going anywhere half the time, to be honest with you. But here lately, changing my environment on where I'm working, like if it's sitting outside of my on my terrace, or if it's going to a restaurant in a window seat, just to change that mode, just to break up the monotony, disengage from the energy that's actually in my around that are in my surroundings. That has honestly worked a lot for me to become more of a critical thinker, to be more open, to be more gleeful, and so to speak, and also in that mirror practice. For me being a spoken word artist, I spend a lot of my time now, more so than I used to do this ages ago, practicing my poems again in the mirror, like reading old poetry to myself that I wrote, for to reassure myself of who I am and where I've come from. That has actually helped a lot. So even if you journal, read some of your old journal entries to yourself in a mirror, and and watch your facial expressions and watch how you engage with yourself, but via your reflection. That honestly does help.
Alrighty, and Mashika, same question.
I would say take time for yourself in the morning, but also at night, like 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes at night. Because sometimes what happens is that as soon as we wake up, we just get ready for work or get ready to serve others, but tend to forget about ourselves. So, like, I would say in the morning, find something that gives you joy or gives you that time to just be with yourself. Whether it's you making some tea and then sitting in silence, whether it's you reading a book, journaling, and at night, create a routine that requires you giving back to yourself, because those are going to be the same things that keep you uplifted or to keep you going and not having you feel so burnt out. And another thing is, I saw on Twitter, someone was like, we always put all these different things on our to do list. How about you add find joy? So I've been doing this for the past 3 weeks. Every day I say, okay, we have to find joy. And you'll realize the smallest things that give you so much joy. And what you can do is you can create a joy list. Like, what gave you joy for that day, write it down, and then see if you can be consistent about writing what gives you joy. And whenever you have a day where you're like, oh my gosh, like I need something to pick me up, check back at that list and reflect on it and try one of those things, and you'll be like, oh wow, it works. Because all it is that we're getting in tune with our inner child and what made us happy as a child, right? We do those same things as an adult. So start there, find joy, and create time and space for you in the morning and night to just get back to yourself.
That's great. Just simply being present. And I'm definitely going to create a joy list after this. So that's like my homework assignment for this evening. Hopefully, you all do the same thing, because I think that's, uh, yeah, very important. Alrighty, so let's just go ahead and wrap up with our final question of the evening. Again, thank you all for participating and just giving feedback and your experience from your experience. I think this conversation will definitely touch at least one person. I mean, that's all that matters. If we can just change one person's perspective or their outlook on their own life or the lives around them, that's all that matters. So with that, with any conversation that I have with another artist or a wellness practitioner or anyone around whatever topic, I just want to make sure that we create some type of plan moving forward. So no, we just don't simply have a round table of conversation, that we actually create a plan to make change or incite something to happen after this. So, and that can be just among us or the people that are viewing. So again, let's just go around the room. Whoever wants to go first, just raise your hand. But what can we do as a collective group, or anyone that's watching in whatever space, state or country that we're in? What can we do to change the narrative of mental health in the Black community? Or what can we do to change that narrative and push it forward? I think I saw Mashika's finger first. There we go. Pass it to Mashika.
So we first have to be that change. And not only do we have to be the change, but like, we have social media, we have all these different platforms, right? So, post different things that gives you joy, or post the things that, invite people into your life in a very safe space that feels comfortable for you. Either it's you sharing a quote, or you sharing what you ate that day, or just simply like, hey, here's a book to read. Just share it with others, because what I realized, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people may realize too, is that when you begin to share things about yourself, or some things that you may be using or utilizing to de-stress, it can help someone else as well. And you'll find that more people will reach out to you like, oh, wow, I had those same exact feelings or thoughts, or these things that you have shown has helped me. And so I would just say, be the change, educate people, and just provide people with different tools like Google, Pinterest. Like, Pinterest is my best friend. So if you need any self-care tips, go to Pinterest. They have so many ideas for you to do at home or even outside. So I'll just say, be gentle with yourself, but definitely it starts with yourself, and just making small little movements, because you just never know who's watching, like you said.
Thank you. And C. Thomas, do you have anything to add?
I was going to say something similar to what was just said, but I will say, going on, like what's just said, be the change you want to see. Lead by example. If you have poured into yourself all this goodness and all this joy and all this growth and hope, give that back to the community. You don't have to be a product. You may be a product of the community that you came from, but you don't have to be that virus that plagued you for the community. Give back. Show someone else that you too can rise up and be that light, be that hope, be that choice, that positive change for someone else. Lift them up, be there for your community. Remove yourself from situations, disengage yourself from situations that do you no good and mean you no good, and then show yourself. And then, before, again, always gonna start with self. Show yourself, and then show others that you too can do this. You are worthy. You are much regarded in this way of positivity.
Thank you, C. Thomas. And Robert.
If I could give you any assignment, it would be for you to control your narrative. Be specific and intentional in the ways that you describe yourself to other people, and be specific in how you allow other people to describe you. Think about who you are. Wake up every morning when you're brushing your teeth. Remind yourself who you are. We constantly have so many background broken records subscribing ourselves to different things that people want us to be. But you get to say who you are. You get to control how you are addressed. And that begins with the way that you address yourself. So take that time every single day. And if you have to write down a narrative of who you are and what you're proud of, and read that back to yourself 1,000 times, do that. Because the one thing that the pandemic did give us is perspective. We have time to reframe who we are, to really justify our presence in the world, and to think about what we want to be remembered for.
Absolutely. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, C. Thomas. And thank you, Mashika. It was absolute pleasure to share the space with you all and just have this conversation, because, again, it's never the wrong time to have this conversation. The more we have it, the more that it can affect people, the more that it can incite change. There we go. The more that it can just push the conversation and help the narrative, and just allow people to not feel alone during these times, and give them, the opportunity to just move forward and just be the best version of themselves. So This wraps up our panel for today or for this evening or whatever time that you're watching this. If you're watching the recording, thank you all for tuning in. Feel free to revisit anything that you've missed here today. If you just need to rewind, feel free, go ahead. But thank you all for celebrating with us. This is Black on the Block Weekend, the final event of Black on the Block Weekend. Whoop, whoop, we made it. Again, Black on the Block is a weekend to celebrate Black businesses, to uplift them, to push the conversation, just to have conversations about Black businesses, celebrate artists, celebrate ourselves, because, you know, we're great. And does anyone have anything to add or to send us off with? Anything anyone has on their heart that they want to say before we wrap up? C. Thomas.
As I always say, your pain may know you, but it has no power over you.
Yeah, snap for that. Anyone else? No pressure, no pressure. I don't know how you're going to follow up to that. But all right, thank you all. Thank you again, Robert, C. Thomas, Mashika, and everyone else that's tuning in. Feel free to visit our website, joesmovement.org, www.joesmovement.org, or www.creativesuitland.org for more information about Black on the Block. We will be back in whatever capacity or form. Black on the Block will be back again to celebrate everything that I mentioned before. So thank you, for tuning in. It's been a pleasure. Peace.